Hello and happy new year. Welcome to the first Retro Hour podcast of 2025. Now, we are taking a bit of an extended break this week, but we will be back to business as usual with an amazing first guest to start the new year on next Friday's show. But this week, we thought we'd treat you to something a little bit different, a bonus episode of our patrons' exclusive podcast, the Retro Hour After Hours, which I hope you enjoy. And if you want to hear more of it, you can join our wonderful patrons community right now. Head to our website, theretrohour.com. You'll support the show, and also you can unlock 45 previous episodes of the After Hours show. And there is a brand new episode that's going to be landing this month. And just before we get into this week's show, a reminder that the Retro Hour is brought to you every week with our amazing friends at Bitmap Books. So if you need something to beat the January blues, have a look at their full range of incredible retro gaming books, including the amazing N64, a visual compendium that celebrates Nintendo's late 90s wonder console and profiles over 150 titles that define that machine. All the big ones are in there: Super Mario 64, GoldenEye, Legend of Zelda, and they spotlight some lesser-known titles, including Beetle Adventure Racing, Mischief Makers, Body Harvest. They're all in there, weighing in at more than 436 pages, a real celebration of the Nintendo 64, and you can check it out and the rest of their retro gaming collection at bitmapbooks.com. And with our amazing friends at PCBWay. Now, they offer fully featured custom PCB prototyping, low-cost, fast turnaround quality boards, and if you're looking for services like 3D printing or injection molding, they've got you covered. And check out their shared project section and see what big supporters of the retro community they are. Get an instant quote right now at PCBWay.com. Right then, a special treat to start 2025. Enjoy this bonus After Hours episode, and we'll see you for our first proper show of the new year next Friday. Hello and welcome to the Retro Hour After Hours podcast, episode number 43. Of course, our monthly podcast just for our favourite people in the world, our wonderful goal supporters and above. I'm Dan Wood.
I'm Ravi Abbott. I've just nearly spilled a beer. And I'm Joe Fox.
Good job things are relaxed on this podcast, isn't it? Can't believe 44 episodes of the After Hours now. So whether you've listened to every single one or whether you are a new patron just discovering the After Hours for the first time, that's kind of the vibe of this show, isn't it? The fact that Ravi's cracked open a beer, I think, says it all about the After Hours. Yeah,
we're a bit more relaxed in the After Hours, and we get to, do other stuff. We haven't got a guest and the pressure of that, but we've got some interesting themes. And
yes,
what would be great if you guys also suggest what you'd like to hear on the After Hours as well in the Discord. If you could drop some kind of themes that you'd love for us to do, because we've done some interesting ones. This one today we've subjected ourselves to has been quite tough, but you're going to hear about that.
Yeah, we're going to be playing basically the worst video games ever, or some of them, anyway, and giving our honest thoughts.
and see your opinions on them, because, some of these games have been rated like really badly. I'm sure quite a lot of our games have appeared on AVGN videos. And, it's weird. It's always kind of subjective. You play an older game, and then you kind of like, oh, well, I actually love that. And all your mates are saying, oh, that was awful. And, it's a kind of personal experience. So it's going to be interesting to hear people's takes on these titles and if they are as bad as everyone says. Yeah, so we'll get into that in a minute. But, of course, been a while since we did an After Hours episode. I know we're a little bit late on this one, but it has been a really busy summer for us all, hasn't it? You've just got back from a trip to Sweden, Ravi. So I went over to Norway for Retro Messa, and then I decided, I was on holidays from work. Why not spend, actually, it was only 4 days in Sweden. So it's a kind of whirlwind tour across the country. But it was really awesome. I did a bit of gaming there as well. I saw some video game shops when I was out there. Stuff's quite expensive out there.
Did you buy any games when you were out there? Any pickups?
No, I didn't buy any games. I saw comic book stores and stuff like that more, and record stores as well. There were a few game ones, but they were kind of very like commercial, mainstream, modern stuff. God, I didn't go to any retro gaming stores.
Well, that's the thing about buying games when you're abroad as well. Because I always, whenever I'm in like Italy and places like that, I often find video game shops.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, the price of that's pretty good. Then I realise it's the Italian version of the game. I'm not going to be able to understand it when I get it
if you're like a completionist and you want to get like the Swedish version of this, or you know, the Norwegian version of this, it would be absolute heaven. But I'm not a collector like that. I just like to pick up something. But I went to it's called, I'm not going to be a Sivlum. It's Hey STHLM. So I'm not able to pronounce that. But that was a arcade in Stockholm, and that was an absolutely wicked experience, because I've not been to Arcade Club. I've not been to any of these kind of retro arcades and these new ones that have popped up. So I've not been in an arcade since I was probably a teenager, you know, a proper arcade.
We say it all the time, but we need to get up to Leeds and do a visit together to Arcade Club. It's only like an hour away in the car.
Have you guys been in arcades then recently?
Yeah, I've been in Arcade Club.
Yeah, I've been Arcade
You have as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I went to Arcade Club last year for my friend's stag do.
You kind of revert, don't you? You feel like, I'm a kid again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that, but I was on my own with a beer, like the weird, like 40-year-old, you know, going around. But it was a really awesome setup. So it's like a heavy metal bar, like rock bar. So they're playing like metal music. It was all themed like quite dark. You know, how the cool metal bars look, where they've got like, you know, red on the side, black and kind of purples and dark tones. They had a load of pinball machines as you came in. So James Bond one, with all the Sean Connery films. They had Stranger Things as well, which was a really tough pinball machine. I lost a lot of credits on Stranger Things, actually. But that was really cool to play on them. And then you went into the arcade section, and this was like mega focused on Japanese stuff. So they had a whole rhythm section area, which I forgot how fun rhythm games are. Really cool. They had one with the drums where you've just got two huge drums and you've got to smack them. They had these weird new ones which are kind of like, they're like called pattern racers, or you know, you've got a pattern falling down and then you've got this like circular dial and you've kind of got to ride and race the pattern, which is a kind of weird reactive one. And other ones which look a bit like washing machines, the front of washing machines with a kind of like light up section that you hit the sides of, and you do that in a rhythm section. But then they had like a DJ one as well that I played on, which was quite cool because you had the like little DJ decks, and then you could speed it up and slow it down, and it had a lot of dance tunes. Of course, all of them were in Japanese. They had like a few British options, English language options, but it was all mostly huge Japanese ones.
So you could DJ in a nightclub in Japan now then and be a hit.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I can say I had a Japanese gig. There was probably one person watching. But I played Persona as well on the piano, which I found that was my favourite, the piano one, because I used to play piano and I got really good at that. And I was like thinking, you know, someone's going to walk in and be impressed by my skills, but no one was. And
looking around, hey girls, look at me.
Yeah, that's it. And then I went around the corner and there was a like DDR, you know, Dance Dance Revolution. Loads of people going on that, proper still going for it. For Joe, they had House of the Dead 4. Nice. There was Time Crisis 5, I think it is, where you can duck on the left and right. And then they had like what was it? Rambo. They had Rambo with an Uzi. Nice. Like a video game double Uzi thing, which was pretty sick. And then they had some of those candy machines, which had like Street Fighter versions on them, Bubble Bobble, a few others as well. And it was good because I got like 20 quid's worth of tokens, and I was there for 2 hours. And
that's really good.
Two beers, you know. So yeah, it was a good night. Yeah,
good stuff. So what about you, Joe? Well, Ravi's been having fun in arcades. What have you been doing?
Work. I had 2 weeks off over the summer, but I spent those 2 weeks doing my garden, which isn't very retro game inspired.
You can make a game out of that, though.
Tetris.
I
If they can do Power Simulator, you could do Garden Builder.
Garden Builder. I put in time. When I say builder, I mean a whole new decking and patio and everything. All slabbed, concreted in, and cemented, and fence posts, etc. And I ripped out my old decking and stuff. So
Joe's a proper man, Ravi. Not I mean,
I do gardening as well.
I have a gardener.
but in terms of games, the only thing I have actually played, which I have actually played a lot of, is I replayed through Dark Souls. I put 55 hours into that. So I've been playing that for about 2 months, about an hour a night. Really, really, really enjoying that. And I've just started a second playthrough on it. I know that's not a retro game, but a lot of people know I'm a big Dark Souls fan, so I've been really enjoying playing the remaster of that. And I think I told you guys, I actually bought a PS5 2 weeks ago. And so far, I've managed to take it out the box and plug it in, but I haven't turned it on.
Are there any titles that you're really gagging to play on there, like retro ones as well? You're going to join the PS Network?
I was going to join the PS Network because I was under the impression that Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 were on there, but only Resident Evil 1 is on it, from the PlayStation.
Oh.
So I thought it was going to be a modern, easy way to play them, but I'm sure they will come because they have come out on PC.
Can you get the disc and put it in the original disc?
No,
you can play PS4 and PS5 games on it. That's it. So you can't put the PS1 disc in or anything.
But you can with the Xbox, can't you? You can put an original Xbox game into a
you
Series
can.
X,
You can with the Xbox, which is cool. And obviously, Microsoft has said that they're going to preserve the history of Xbox, and they will continue to do that in the next generation as well. But Sony don't seem. I'm not saying they're not keen on the idea because they do have a lot of games on the PlayStation Network, like Siphon Filter and Ape Escape and stuff like that. But
you're going to buy them again.
Yeah.
Essentially,
the only games really that I was like, I really want to play is, funny enough, Demon Souls, which was the first Dark Souls game, because I've never actually played that because it was on PS3. And they remastered that for PS5. And then I'll be an absolute sucker and just put sucker across my forehead, and I will probably buy the remake of The Last of Us and the remaster of The Last of Us 2, even though I played those games to death on PS3 and PS4. But because I absolutely loved them.
You know what? I've got a friend who works for Sony. He offered me a code to buy The Last of Us remastered again for PS5 for 20 quid, and I said no to him. So I'm not buying that game for a third time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
I probably will, because I literally bought a PS3 right at the end of the PS3's life in 2013 to just play The Last of Us. And that was the only game I ever played on PS3. And then when I got a PS4 in 2017, I literally got Bloodborne, which is a Souls game, and The Last of Us remastered. And then I got The Last of Us 2 in 2020. And that's the only 3 games I've played on my PS4. And now I have a horrible feeling the only games I'm going to play on PS5 are going to be Demon Souls, which is part of the whole Dark Souls thing, and then The Last of Us remastered.
You are the reason they keep bringing out these remasters every couple of years and charging full price, yeah.
Yep. So, yeah. So, that's what I've been up to. Just playing the same games over and over again. What about you, Dan?
Well, I haven't done a hell of a lot of gaming, I must admit. Work been quite busy. I did actually buy some games that I've got here that I will get around to playing at some point that are retro games. The first one is a Gabriel Knight game called The Beast Within.
Oh, right.
So it was the second Gabriel Knight game, apparently, which was it's from 1994. Mm-hmm. And I was talking about this on the
what system?
The Hangout. It's for the PC.
Okay, yeah. It came out on Mega Drive as well, didn't it?
I don't know if this one did, because this is it's basically a full 6 CD full motion video fest.
Oh, okay, it won't be that one then.
This game. So, I imagine this one probably didn't. But I saw it on, I was watching an old episode of Bad Influence on, there's a YouTube channel whose name I've completely forgotten. He was on This Week in Retro last week.
Rose-Tinted Spectrum.
That's him, Rose-Tinted Spectrum. And my brother actually said to me, have you watched this guy's channel? Because he does basically commentary of Games Master and Bad Influence, a bit like, Charlie Brooker style. He goes and just basically rips them. So I've been enjoying that. It's been really funny, but also it's a way to kind of watch all the other episodes of Bad Influence again in a condensed format. Of course, he edits them all down to about 8-9 minutes. And this was one of the games that was featured on there. I remember thinking that looks really good because, I mean, for some reason, FMV games have kind of come into my mind a bit more recently. I've got quite an interest in them again right now. So I did look at this.
You need to play the SWAT games.
Yeah, I mean, there's
get onto those. Yeah,
it's a whole era of games where I wasn't really into it when it was around. Of course, I still had an Amiga in 1994 and I couldn't play. Epic 6 CD FMV games.
There was a beautiful, beautiful period of FMV stuff on the PC, and I think you've got one of the right titles there, definitely.
Well, I looked at downloading the game from archive.org, and if you've ever downloaded CD images from archive.org, obviously they're serving a lot of files. It's quite a slow download normally, isn't it, off archive.org?
Yeah.
And even the first CD said like an hour and 15 minutes, and it's 6 CDs. So I thought I'll just go on eBay. Managed to find a copy for about £4. Which actually looks brand new. Looks like it's never been used.
The problem you're going to have is getting a setup to play FMV CD games for the PC because they were so finicky and just getting it right is really tough.
I've got a nice Pentium 1 with a Matrox Millennium graphics card in there.
Yeah. That should do it, yeah. Graphics cards can be an issue with certain ones, but yeah, that should work.
Yeah, with a Sound Blaster in there as well. I've installed it but not played it yet. And I did run like the system test and it passed it. So, yeah, I think that should work fine. So I'm looking forward to trying that out. I managed to find a couple of old PC games as well, randomly in a charity shop in Oxfam, which I very rarely see any video games in charity shops near here, apart from like old copies of FIFA. Managed to find Riven, the sequel to Myst.
Yes. You're getting really into the FMV ones, aren't you?
Yeah. Weirdly, I just seem to keep finding them.
You need to get Ripper with Christopher Walken.
Yes,
yes, that's a good one.
So I managed to get a copy of that for £2 and a Little Big Adventure as well on a PC CD-ROM for £2. So I think I'm going to do a bit of gaming on my old Pentium at some point over the next couple of weeks. That's kind of the plan. Outside of that, I've been messing around with. I actually built a Haiku system, which is obviously Haiku is it's an operating system that is a spiritual successor to BOS, and I managed to get an i5 PC that I bought for £30 from a little technology shop that's near me, Radtech, here in the village, and the guys built it because I said, look, I need a PC for just recording YouTube stuff, that I can basically wipe out and just basically reinstall old operating systems on. So they made that for me, and I was using Haiku, installed it, got it running really nicely. Then the machine just died. I was like, this is weird. So I thought, well, it wasn't even powering on at all, so I thought the power supply must be fried. So I went on eBay, paid £25 for a new power supply. That arrived a couple of days later, put it in, PC still wouldn't boot. So then found a motherboard that is the same motherboard that's in this PC, ordered that off eBay for £35. And that arrived and that worked. So now I've basically spent £60 repairing that £30 PC.
I love that. And you enjoyed the process of it, though, didn't you? And also, Joe is completely confused when you mention Haiku or BOS or something like that. It's just like alien speak.
Cheers, man. Yeah. Joe's an absolute idiot.
No, he just doesn't know obscure operating systems. Probably most of our listeners don't know about BOS.
Imagine Joe just came out with a load of BOS knowledge now. And
he could be a BOS user from back.
Might have one in the cupboard. But yeah, so it's that's pretty much what I've been doing. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't want to make us guys feel like we don't know anything about BOS and Haiku. But yeah, so it's that's pretty much been my month. Nothing too exciting, but looking forward to getting into some of those FMV games. That's kind of I think my next obsession for the next few months. I imagine. So I imagine those games though, playing Gabriel Knight, will be much more enjoyable than what I've been subjected to over the last couple of weeks, which is the theme of this week's podcast. Mm-hmm. This kind of came about, didn't it? Because I think someone just kind of said it as a throwaway comment, didn't they, on the podcast a couple of months ago? It might have been you, Joe, said it, that we should play some crap games and see what we really think of them. And then this actually became a theme of an episode of the After Hours. So the idea is that there are obviously many video games that make the top 100 worst lists all the time. And some of them are games that we either haven't played before but we've probably watched millions of videos and, AVGN slagging them off and that kind of thing. Or maybe games that we did play when they were new that we were disappointed by, but maybe haven't revisited ever since. So that's kind of the theme that we went for. And we've picked 4 games each. So 4 famously awful video games. And we thought that we'd give them a fair crack of the whip. So we would, ignore all of the any preconceptions we might have about these games, try and view them through fresh eyes.
Yeah, we had a play. There was one game that made me feel massively sick, so
yes.
I literally had to turn that off and just kind of take in what I could with that. But it's. I've heard you spent an hour and stuff on some of yours, Dan, and Joe as well. You really got into them. Has it been painful, guys? Well,
I mean, that hour I spent on my first game, which I'll get into in a minute, was possibly one of the worst hours I've ever had in front of a screen. But we'll get into that. So why don't we start with Joe, though? Because
you always start with me.
Yeah, I was going to say. It's tradition now, isn't it? So we're going to pick 4 dreadful games that we subjected ourselves to. What are you going to start with?
I will go in the order I played them in. So I played Shaq Fu for the Sega Mega Drive.
Wow.
Which I had never played before.
Oh, I think there was an Amiga port of Shaq Fu as well.
Yeah, there was.
So I'm only familiar with the Sega Mega Drive and SNES version, which AVGN reviewed, 2007 maybe, a long, long time ago, and said, all I can really remember about that was it was terrible, and it just, the idea, the premise of Shaquille O'Neal, the hype and height of his fame, where he did all those like stupid films, like he did that Kazam, the genie film,
yes,
and he did what's it called, Steel, where he plays like the Man of Steel, where he's literally a man made out of steel. It was in all these terrible films, and then he obviously had Shaq Fu the game,
and Good Burger. Don't forget that.
Was he in Good Burger? Was he?
He was in Good Burger.
Because didn't they have Michael Jordan's Chaos in the Windy City, which was like a weird platformer?
They did,
well,
which is which plays very similar to like Bram Stoker and all those kind of games as well, but not too far removed from like Flashback.
It's kind of the start of basketball branding at that point.
Yeah, it was. It was around then. Well, Shaq Fu was 1994, so I ended up really getting into this. So I don't want to give it too much credit, but the bottom line...
It's my favourite game ever now.
Bottom line is I kind of enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed it, but I don't know if it was just because of... It was a lot of factors to consider here. So I played it with my daughter, who was like enthralled with it. Like, she thought it was fantastic. And we played it in my games room, which just hasn't happened in a long time. It generally just gets used for the podcast at the moment. So we sat playing Shaq Fu. She really, really enjoyed it. I hadn't played a retro game in a while, so I was quite enjoying it. But the story is just like nonsense. I was reading it out for my daughter, and it's just Shaq Fu was in Tokyo shopping, and he walked into a dojo, and an old man said, "You're the chosen one," and sent him through a portal. And that is literally that's like all it says.
Pretty standard 90s video game.
Yeah, and you've got to save this little boy. And I quite liked the overworld. There's like an overworld, and you get to pick what order you fight, like the people you need to fight in. And obviously, it's a one-on-one beat 'em up for those who don't know. What off the hype of Street Fighter 2, obviously. But interestingly, when you play it, it's a one-on-one fighter, but once again, it's not too far removed from like. Imagine trying to play a fighting game, but it's got the controls of Flashback. Right. Like, so when he doesn't like, it's not fluid. Like, he takes a step at a time when you step towards the enemy.
That sounds horrific.
He sneaks towards him.
And then there's no combos. Like, just, I played it with the 3-button controller for the Mega Drive. So ideally you should have the 6-button. So it's one of these jobs where you got to press the start button to change the A, B, and C between the punches and the kicks. So you get, your low, your medium and high punch, and your low, medium and high kick. There's no combos. Like, they don't chain together. It's not like if you just keep pressing medium punch, then he will chain like left, right punches together. Like, he would just keep throwing the same punch, slow, clumsy punch over and over again. And the first person I went to go fight was this like wild woman in the trees. And obviously Shaq's like, what is he? He's like 7 foot something in real life. So in the game, he is very tall. So the first enemy I walk up to punch, I'm too tall to hit her. so
like your fist is going above her head?
My fist was going above her head. So I was like, well, that's brilliant game design straight away. But then when you jump, you know, in like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, when you jump, you generally kind of like, you can throw punches and kicks and stuff when you're in the air. Couldn't do that. You go into a ball when you jump and it's like one stiff animation that you can't like get out of or direct, you know, like you can't kind of like, you know, in Mortal Kombat and stuff, you could jump in one way, but then if you see that the other player's doing something, you can kind of like cancel it. Do you know what I mean? Like you can kind of
turn around in midair.
Turn around and you can't do anything like that. It was just horrible. But the AI is really stupid. So I found that every single enemy, I could just walk at them and just do my high kick, and I would just kick them in the face all the way into the corner, and then I would crouch and punch them until they died. And I pretty much perfect every enemy after I realised that, all the way till the last boss.
Because you blasted through this in about 20 minutes,
I blasted through it to the last boss in about 20 minutes, and I was like, wow, this was really, really easy. And I'm quite enjoying it. I feel good right now. And then, interestingly, I got to the last boss, who was a mummy called Ra. And he actually beat me. I had to fight him properly. And he beat me. So, and you only get 3 continues. So I said to my daughter, I'm just going to go nip to the loo. So I went to the toilet. And I could hear her playing it when I went to the toilet. And I came back. And she was sat quietly and didn't even look at me. And I just looked, and it was the back to the title screen, like the character select screen. So I would have completed it. But my daughter, obviously, and I said, did you have a go? And she went, yeah. Did you lose? And she went, yeah. Like that.
Give it a good go, bless her, didn't she?
She gave it a go, which I would have loved to have seen.
She seemed to, you sent a video, she seemed to like the music.
She did enjoy the music. But the music is actually terrible. Final kind of thing noted as well, you can't do any special moves. There's no fireballs, Hadoukens, no dragon punches, anything like that from what I could figure out. Absolutely nothing. And the graphics were horrible, like they were a pixelated mess. But I enjoyed it.
You know what, weirdly, because whenever we do these lists of games, I always like to have a look on Wikipedia and basically see what the reception was like when they came out. But apparently, back in 94, was it, when it came out?
Yeah.
Games Master give it 81% for the Mega Drive version, 83% for the SNES version. Mean Machines magazine gave it 79%. So actually, it was reviewed quite well. There was one review here. GamePro magazine said it's basically it's everything a good fighting game needs, with the exception of good fighting.
You know, I think there were so many good fighting games out on the Mega Drive at the time that it probably, from what I heard, it sounds like Joe enjoyed it and it was decent, but it probably got washed under all the other fighters that were out there.
It wasn't decent. I'll be honest, I think I enjoyed the situation with my daughter, and I enjoyed it. I'll give it this: it's a very colourful game. It's a very nice, colourful game. But like Shaq's face is just like a pixelated mess. So I'm torn to say whether it was actually good or not. I enjoyed playing it. You would have been very disappointed as a child because of, like you say, I know I'm 35 now, but I figured out straight away all you need to do is just kick them into the corner.
As Amiga users,
in like 15, 20 minutes.
We were disappointed constantly with those
this is true.
kind of beat 'em ups. Yeah. So, Shaq Fu, we would have been like, ooh.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, because I always wonder, whether the fact that AVGN made such a video that ripped it apart, whether that's kind of changed people's opinion. Because, like I said, the game initially reviewed quite well, but now it's often, in the top 10 worst games of all time lists.
I think it's
so it always interests me as to whether, going back to source and playing it again rather than just believing everything that...
I think what's crazy about it is it's just the situation as well. It's Shaq. In a video game, it's just crazy. I mean, IMDb, which is obviously a modern platform where users vote, it's got 3 out of 10 on that. And famously, there was a website, I forget what it was called, but back in the 2000s, where you could send your copies of Shaq Fu to the website and they'd destroy it for you. But interestingly, because obviously it did sell quite well, I end up, because obviously I resell quite a bit at game events, we quite often end up with copies of Shaq Fu, and they always sell. They do always sell. It's only like a £10 game, but it always sells. Like
maybe people like you just actually want to give it a try for themselves.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's my.
Did you know
game.
there was there's a sequel on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One as well?
Yeah,
yes.
I've not played
Have you got that?
I've not played it, but that is a full-on like scrolling beat 'em up.
Yeah.
So I must have to give it a try at some point.
So there you go then. Not a bad review then, definitely. Would you say it's not as bad then as like AVGN made out, for example?
I'd give it a solid 4 out of 10.
Yeah. Yeah. Better than some on my list already.
Yeah.
So what are you going to go for, Ravi? You're number 4.
Seeing we're doing it in order, I might as well do it in order. So the first game I played was Charlie's Angels.
Nice.
And I played that on the GameCube. It was an interesting title. For me, Charlie's Angels, I remember there was a 90s film with like Drew Barrymore. Lucy Liu was in it as well. Can't remember who else was in it.
Oh,
but,
what's her name?
It was.
I can see her now. Something about Mary. What's her name?
Cameron Diaz.
Yeah, Cameron Diaz. That was it. And they were like they jazzed it up again because it was a 1970s series originally, wasn't it? And it was kind of a bit weird. You had a bloke like, angels do this for me. And it was kind of a bit like a sugar daddy.
Charlie's name was, interestingly.
Yeah. and that kind of fit into the 90s. You know what I mean? And they were all dressed in leather and stuff. This had the weird feel of the kind of 70s stuff, but it felt a bit Austin Powers-y 60s at the beginning. So there was this ridiculous plot that there was a gang going around the world stealing all of the landmarks. So they'd stole Stonehenge, they'd stole Statue of Liberty. The angels had
Put it in the back of a van.
Yeah, go and find it. And then when you actually get into the game, it's really weird. You've got like flip phone in there as like placement, but then it reminded me of Die Hard Arcade.
Right.
You know, the fighting one.
Yeah.
Where you're on so it's kind of like that, but kind of Streets of Rage style. Their camera angles were absolutely awful. You're kind of starting off as one of the angels, and you can actually choose different angels. So in a GTA style, where you've got a choice of 3 characters, you know, you can zoom in and out of, you could start with a different angel on each level, and they all had different like pace and power. So Drew Barrymore, she was a bit slower and a bit like hencher. And Cameron Diaz did this like ridiculous spin round, and Lucy Liu was like a lot thinner and faster, but they were all in different scantily clad clothes as well, like level of clothing. So they were in bikinis at the beginning, which kind of not
sensible outfit for fighting then.
Yeah, totally. And I just thought their legs would be wrecked after this because it's an endless kind of kick fest. You do have a few combos and stuff, but it's really boring because you're killing these guys, more turn up, killing these guys. There's no variety in them. Some of them, some of the moves, like, so, you know, in the film, they jump up in the air and they do the kicks and stuff like that. They've actually got some of the moves. So you jump, but then you like pause in the air and then you do the kick and you move forwards, but it looks absolutely ridiculous. And every time I'd do one of those like kicks in someone's face, it would say excellent. So obviously that was a high scoring points thing, but it was really hard to do. And then the guys in it were just stabbing them constantly, and these girls probably took like 10 stab hits like in each fight, and they were just in bikinis completely fine. The interface was all right on it. It could have made more of the switching of kind of characters. I enjoyed the graphics on the intro sequence as well. But yeah, overall, it was a relentless bore. I think I did 2 levels on it, and I just found it incredibly like, I've got to get through this guy, get through these sets of more guys. And yeah, I wasn't a fan of it at all, to be honest.
Was the Destiny's Child soundtrack Independent Women anywhere in
No,
there?
the soundtrack was actually all right. The intro was quite good, and it had like a kind of a GoldenEye-esque soundtrack in it. Yeah. But no, they didn't have any Destiny's Child, actually. And they didn't have any clips of the movies. Right. They had no kind of full reference to the movies. It was just like kind of renders that looked like them. I heard that you can collect clips, and also the voice actors did kind of sound a bit like Drew Barrymore and Lucy Liu. So it
wasn't samples then?
No, they put effort in for the girls. But overall, it was shit, yeah.
Well, Joe started the tradition there of giving it scores out of 10. Go on, what are you going to go for?
2.
Nice.
2 out of 10.
2 out of 10, yeah, because I put it down because I was just so bloody bored of these endless waves of stabbing people.
Yeah, so pretty ropey starts in for all of us so far.
I don't think it's going to get better, is it?
Definitely ain't with this one. So I went straight in at the bottom with my first game, which was Superman on the Nintendo 64.
The greatest game ever made.
Now, before I get into, have either of you guys ever played?
I've given it a go,
64?
yeah.
Never
on some
played it.
emulators, yeah.
Was that a yes or sorry? You're both talking at the same time.
Oh, I've given it a go on some emulators, yeah.
Yeah. What
I've
about
never
you, Joe?
played it, no.
Right, okay. Well, obviously you're aware of the game. I mean, having, again, AVGN made this game famous on YouTube, the flying through the rings. And this game, when I first started it, I was expecting to do that. It took me about 5 minutes to learn how to fly in the game. So when you start, I assume, on N64 games, generally you press, like in racing games, the Z button to like accelerate, don't you? Mm-hmm. That's kind of a standard control mechanism in there. For some reason, I was in the air, I kept dropping down and then just jumping around and punching. And it took me ages to figure out how to fly forwards. So what you need to do is you actually press the Z button to get in the air, and then you hold down the B button to accelerate. So it took me way more time than it should to figure that out. So that was already a frustrating start to the game. And then, first thing you have to do is fly through the rings. Now, if you haven't played it before, Joe, I don't know if you're aware, but actually you're on a timer.
Yeah, like a 10-second timer as well, isn't it?
Well, when you start, it's 90 seconds on level 1. And you fly through a series of rings, and you can only miss 3 of them. So if you miss 3 rings, you're back to the beginning of the game again. The only thing is I found when you're holding down B, I was flying way too quickly and, coming around, missing the rings totally.
Yeah.
So in the end, I figured out a way to get through all the rings pretty much, and that was by basically just tapping the B button. So rather than holding it down when you go too quickly, it's off, tap, 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 and you actually go at a speed where it is controllable, which is fine, but obviously you're up against that time limit. So doing it that way, you get 90 seconds on the first level. That probably took me about maybe 75 seconds to get through all the rings doing that. And then eventually I got through level 1. But when you get to level 2, the timer doesn't reset. So basically you've got to do level 2
in that
with whatever
time that you've got left.
Yeah, whatever you got left over from level 1.
Fuck.
So first time I did it, I had 5 seconds to do level 2. Saw the text that came up on the screen tell me what to do, then died. I had to start the whole game again from the beginning, going through the rings. Eventually I did it. I kind of got it down to getting through level 1 and getting to the second level with about 15 seconds left on the timer. And as it turns out, level 2 is quite a short one. All you have to do is pick up 2 cars and throw them. So I did that, and then luckily your time resets again, and then it's more rings. So, you're flying around buildings this time as well. And then I got to that bit, and then my time ran out lots of times. I had to go back and start them all over again. Eventually got to the 3rd level where at this stage you've got to take a police car to the end of the street. But I did something wrong. I'm not sure what happened, and it just blew up. And then it sent me all the way back to the start of the rings again. So I actually made notes as I was playing this, and literally I've typed F this in capital letters at the end of my notes.
Nice.
So that's where I got to with Superman 64. I said probably spent about an hour on that game, and it was one of the worst hours of video gaming I've ever had the misfortune to sit through. And I've played some shoddy games in my time.
So far, we've all played a game that AVGN has actually reviewed. And
Yes.
I remember him saying that Superman 64, I'm making it look like it was genuinely one of the worst games ever. So
I mean, if I could give it a 0 out of 10, I really would. It is that. There's nothing really. The graphics are not even nice.
Did it have the Nintendo seal of approval?
God. Well, I didn't have the original version of it. It was on the EverDrive.
bet it did,
it's just shocking that something like that, such a big brand as well, could come out. I mean, obviously you've got the N64, that famous kind of fogger vision, but it's one of the worst I've ever seen in this game in terms of draw distance. And the controlling is dreadful. I mean, using the N64 analog stick is not always the most accurate anyway. But there were times when I was flying through the rings, I thought I was going to snap it off. It's like, just so unresponsive.
What a bloody boring concept for a game.
Yeah.
Just flying through rings.
Literally, if you took all the ring flying stage out, because the bits between the rings, like I said, there was level 2's 15 seconds long.
Yeah.
Pick up 2 cars, throw them, and then another 2 minutes of flying through rings
That would
again.
have been good, a whole car throwing game, but or throw cars through rings.
What's the noise you make when you fly?
I was hearing that like nightmares for about a week after I played that. That one definitely lived up to the hype. Dreadful game. Definitely never revisit that one again. So, that is every bit as bad as everybody says. So if you haven't played it, definitely do not. So, number 3, Joe.
Number 2, my second game.
Oh, yeah. I thought we were going to reverse order, whatever. Either way.
Yeah. The second game I played was Batman Forever for the Sega Mega Drive. Now, there's another one that AVGN spoke about. And
it's interesting because when you said you were playing that, I said the Saturn version I heard is awful, but you said the Saturn version is actually quite good.
So the Saturn version, there doesn't seem to be much talk about that, but the Saturn version is a belt scrolling beat 'em up, which also uses the what's it called, the photorealistic graphics that Mortal Kombat did. What's that called again?
Oh, the digitized
graphics. Yeah, that uses digitized graphics as well, but that's like a full-on Streets of Rage style beat 'em up, and it's just absolutely mental with superpower moves and everything. And that one's wicked, and even AVGN says that one's wicked. But the Sega Mega Drive version, which does use the digitized graphics, is just a side-along kind of platformer / beat 'em up. So imagine playing Mortal Kombat. So you're on that one plane, but it's a platformer.
I remember when Batman Forever came out, and it was kind of universally taken the mick out of by everyone, and they really didn't like it. But looking back at it, I find there was some funny kind of stuff, but people hated it, and Jim Carrey in it, they absolutely hated, I remember.
Well,
the Riddler.
People hated the film, but now people tend to look back at it and go, oh, well, it wasn't that bad. It's not as bad as Batman and Robin. But I remember...
You know what? I bought the film on VHS not long ago from that charity shop, where they were selling the videos.
Yeah.
And I'd never watched it before. I watched it for the first time probably about 2 months ago, and I actually quite enjoyed it. I don't think it was that bad.
I think it was because they had so many good Batmans before that it was seen as a downgrade because they had the peak Batman before,
General consensus is I remember when Batman Forever came out and people were saying it was the worst film ever made, but now people look back at it and say it was a solid 5 out of 10 kind of film. Which compared to Batman and Robin, which is just truly terrible film. But back to the game. Yeah, imagine you're trying to traverse a level, but it's Mortal Kombat buttons and kind of controls. And it's so stiff. So it's not even as fluid as Mortal Kombat. It's super stiff. And the main takeaway for it graphically, it's not as good as Mortal Kombat either. For the Mega Drive,
it's digitized characters.
It's digitized characters. So you're walking around as a Val Kilmer lookalike, as Batman. You can be Batman or Robin, and it is 2-player 1 console. But if you end up fighting 2 enemies at once, if one of them gets behind you, you're screwed. If you've got one in front of you and one behind you, the game doesn't really know which one to look at, because if in Mortal Kombat, if you jump over each other, you automatically kind of turn around, don't you?
Yeah.
Whereas in this, it doesn't really know what to do, and you just get your ass handed to you, and your life bar just gets drained, and you just fight the same guys over and over again. I got to the end of the second level, which doesn't sound very far, but the levels are long. And I'm not gonna lie, I played it on easy, so you get like 7 lives as well. And I was just getting hammered by enemies on this, and like the only thing I could figure out how to do, which was relatively effective, is the down uppercut, which you can do in Mortal Kombat. That was like the only move that seemed to do like a lot of damage to the enemies to try quite quickly kill them before they piled up.
Were you waiting for a toasty?
Yeah. And it's made by Acclaim, so it's it makes sense that they've made it in the same style as the Mega Drive, same style as Mortal Kombat. But yeah, the first level, you're in the insane asylum in Arkham Asylum. You just fight the same sprite over and over again. And in the second level, you're in a bank and you fight a guy who looks a little bit like Two-Face, but he isn't Two-Face. He's one of Two-Face's henchmen in a suit. And then some like bumbling idiots in balaclavas, which like walk at you hunched over, and they're very, very similar to the bumbling vampires in Night Trap they reminded me of. But because it's a platformer, there's lots of elements of like, using Batman's grapple hook to shoot up and go up a level or drop down a platform, etc. But the controls are just disgusting. So it doesn't tell you the controls anywhere. So to grapple diagonally, it's B and C together. To grapple up, it's up and B and C, but you have to press up slightly before you press B and C. To drop down a level, you have to press down, then C to drop. And to pause the game, you have to press start, then A for it to pause the game.
Wow.
God knows how I figured all of that out without a manual or going to Google. I just remember AVGN saying, like, the controls are absolutely awful, and something along the lines of you have to press one button, then another to do stuff. At the start of the level, you pick what gadgets you want to take into the level. So, like, you want your batarangs and all this. You can pick, like, 4 items. Never used one. Couldn't figure out how to use a single item the entire game. No matter what I tried. It was just, and the music and the sound design in it is just terrible. And at one point I had a full life bar and I got fly kicked and it killed me in one go. And I was just like, what the hell is going on? And once again, I was with my daughter and she was loving it. She thought it was great. She was dancing around. She was pretending to be a bat. She was like literally sat on the chair and she was like, she put her arms out like a bat and she was like pretending to be a bat to the music, which was really, really cute. But it didn't work on me this time. Like, it just, the playing it with my daughter and stuff just didn't work like it did with Shaq Fu. So this is I found this game really frustrating. So I'd probably give it a 2 out of 10.
You've got some good stories there to tell around the dinner table when she brings her first date home, though. Yeah. She loved Batman Forever, the video game.
She does, Mega Drive.
Yeah, so I'm watching a playthrough of it now on YouTube. Yeah, it doesn't look the greatest game ever. Like you said, it's the fact that the fact they overuse the same enemy over and over again.
Yeah.
It just makes it really repetitive and boring, I imagine, playing it. So, yeah, well-deserved 2 out of 10 there. What's your next one then, Ravi?
Yeah, so my next one is an interesting title, BMX XXX, which was a weird kind of sexual 90s novelty BMX game. It was obviously, it was deemed in 90s kind of humor and stuff, that this was at the time when being nude in a video game was really one thing that they were trying to sell it on. There was actually a trick that you can do that would do that with your players at the end. But overall, it's a really kind of confused title. It's actually quite good to play. The engine is interesting because Dave Mirra's BMX was the other big one. And then, of course, you had like Tony Hawk at the time. But this was based on a aggressive inline skater game engine. So, like Blades. It was based on that. And it felt really light on the kind of fingers. Your characters, you were quite zoomed in when you played it. You feel like you've got a lot more space with Tony Hawk's, and usually depending on the size of your characters as well. Like if I pick one of the smaller characters, one of the women in there, it would be more zoomed out. If I pick one of the blokes, there was a guy called Rad or something like that, and he was quite close up, so you couldn't really see much of what else was going on in there. It felt like, I've played a lot of these skater games, and it felt between kind of Tony Hawk's 1 and 2, but where they'd just implemented stuff like the manuals in there, and they weren't implemented so well. Grinding was quite good, but transferring from like a grind to a manual wasn't amazingly good. Some of the camera angles were all right. It wasn't that bad. The level designs were quite good. It was good fun. There was a lot of novelty humor in there and 90s stuff. Like literally one of the first levels, you're picking up like prostitutes to take to people. It's not the most PC game at all. There's a guy selling salty nutsacks. It's all this kind of humor. The voices are quite funny in it. It was an all right game, It felt like the Saints Row of kind of BMX skaters games, just there for the stupidity and the fun, but you could still play it, and you could still have a kind of a bit of a good time on it. There were some really good standout things on there. Some of the special tricks were really cool. The soundtrack was absolutely banging. Like of that period, you had it's got NERD in there, Motley Crue,
proper early 2000s,
Newfound Glory, KRS-One, like proper good soundtrack on there. Just the storylines were just absolutely stupid and dumb, and like if you played Tony Hawk Underground and stuff, they did it a lot better in that, with like having the Jackass crew in there and stuff. That actually added to a lot of humor in the voice acting, where this was just random stupid stuff. Like it's like a 90s extreme sports lads mag in one game.
You say 90s, that came out 2003.
Well, yeah, 2003, yeah. And then, but I would go back to it just because it's a new like BMX kind of title that I've not played on that engine before, and it was all right, I'd probably give it 6 or 5 out of 10, and I can see why it got ported onto a lot of systems and it was popular, even though apparently it's the worst selling BMX title out of all of them. And Dave Mirra actually tried to sue them and say, you've ruined my reputation with this with this title. So yeah, an interesting one. But yeah, I'm not recommending it, but it's better than the slating it got back in the days.
Well, apparently when you complete the single player campaign, you can then create nude characters.
Yes, yeah.
In the game.
And that was the big thing that they advertised everywhere, because obviously nude Lara Croft was a huge thing at the time, and all of that, even though it was just like squares and triangles and stuff.
And apparently this game was cited as one of the main reasons that Acclaim went bankrupt in 2004.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
So,
and I'd like to play the aggressive inline skater one as well, because this is built on that engine, which I've never played that game either. So yeah, it's weird with skating games. I used to play Skate or Destroy. Skate was a new one, and the learning curve is quite hard. Where this one, I felt that it wasn't tough enough. Right. It was just like you could go in, button bash, do loads of mad tricks, sorted, I'm a pro, and it felt a bit like kiddie-like in that sense. Where Skate, you really have to learn the tricks and learn how to balance it. Skate and Destroy was really tough, but once you got it done, it was cool.
Well, first game on the list that's actually bankrupted a company, from the sense of it. So a nice middle 5 out of 10 then, Ravi. So average.
Yeah, average. Yeah.
Okay. So for my number 3 or 2, whichever way around we're doing this, count up or count down, my next game anyway is on the Amiga, and this is Surf Ninjas. Now, I haven't seen the film.
I actually owned it, when I was CD32 collecting, I owned a copy of that. And you've not seen the film. It's one of Rob Schneider's great Surf Ninjas. Have you seen it?
I was going to say, I imagine you guys, had either one of you or both of you, would have seen the film.
I've not seen that one.
Oh God, it's so bad. I think Three Ninjas was another one at the top. There was this whole thing about
Three Little Ninjas.
Three
wasn't
Little
there?
Ninjas. Yeah,
I did see that when I was a
Surf
kid.
Ninjas was the cheap version of that, I think.
Oh God.
Isn't there one called like
Well-
Nazi Surf Ninjas as well?
Yeah, there were lots.
Probably, yeah.
I think there
Wouldn't
was
surprise
Surf
me.
Ninjas 2 maybe as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So this amazingly, I think this is an AGA Amiga game. Like I said, he had it on the CD32. I played the standard Amiga 1200 version. With the fact that this even demanded AGA was slightly awful. But yeah, if you haven't seen the film, I don't know whether the plot of the game follows the
Nothing.
movie.
It's not related to it in any way. From what
But
I
the idea of the
remember,
game is
yeah.
you play the character Johnny McQuinn, who I'm looking on the IMDb here. Apparently, Ernie Reyes Jr. plays Johnny in the film, and the character in this game looks nothing like him.
Nice.
Doesn't look like Rob Schneider either. He and his brother are LA surfers, and they've come from LA to a small oriental island called Patusan, as he found out that he's basically the heir to the throne there or something like that. I couldn't really follow the story all that well. But it turns out when he gets there, the island's been overtaken by ninjas. He has to go and beat them all up and become king or something like that. So when you first boot the game, weirdly, the intro screen is just a badly rendered 3D rendition of the word surf ninjas over what looks like some kind of stock image of like the sea. Really low resolution. No animation, nothing like that. So awful start to it. And then when you get into the game, there are it looks like digitized images at the start of each level, which I imagine are screenshots from the game, from the movie, by the looks of it. I've got to say, I think music was all right. Have a little listen to the music of it.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Kind of works well for a beat 'em up style game. And that's what it is. It's basically, like you call it, a belt scroller today, side scrolling beat 'em up game. Graphics are actually quite nice in the game, I think, even though it's not definitely not the best
Like,
I've seen
the
on the
main
Amiga.
guy is like, he looks hench, doesn't he?
He does.
It looks like a totally different game.
Yeah, which I imagine from what I've looked into this game a bit more after I played it. That generally seems to be the consensus, that it was an already existing beat 'em up game that they literally slapped the Surf Ninjas IP on last minute just to get it out there and have some recognition.
He was going to sell all those CD32s, wasn't it?
Exactly, yeah, could have saved the CD32 this game. But the sprites are nice and big, and there's a lot of locations in the game as well. The levels and areas of the map that you go to are very varied, so it doesn't ever get repetitive. And it's quite gory as well. There's one moment when you literally like rip enemies' intestines and hearts out of the chest, which when that happens, you're like, whoa, didn't see that coming. That is if you manage to get that. So I only managed to do that once because the collision detection on this game is dreadful. But the one thing is, it is actually so easy when you figure out that you can do this. So there are two ways of getting around the game. Like I said, if you try and play it properly, you'll generally get your ass handed to you because the collision detection is really bad. Or you can just basically hold down and tap the fire button and wait for the enemies to walk directly into your fist because the AI is dreadful. Or even better, you can just actually jump past the enemies and they won't even bother you.
Oh, it was a one-button game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's an Amiga standard, up to
And
jump
there's
kind
no
of joystick.
appearance of Leslie Nielsen in there either.
No, nothing like that at all. If you've ever played or seen the Last Action Hero game,
Yeah.
very similar to that. Very similar. So yeah, you can literally complete the whole game really without ever punching or kicking an enemy and just jump past them and keep going. You've got to collect things to get past certain areas of the game, like boxes and bits of wood and all that kind of thing. I give it a good 25 minutes before I got bored of it and turned it off. Wasn't the worst game I've ever played on the Amiga. I look back at some of the scores from when it came out. It got a 9%
Nice.
in Amiga Games magazine, it was called, back in 94. Which I don't think it deserved that. I mean, there are a lot of crap beat 'em up games on the Amiga. I think, like I said, it looked quite nice, and I think the music was good on it. So maybe I give that a 2 out of 10.
So that'd be a 20%.
Yeah, so yeah,
I think you're being
probably.
too kind.
I don't think we found a game yet that I forgot AVGN reviewed this as well on his CD32. Yeah, he just played
did.
it briefly, didn't he?
When I searched for it after I played it, that was the first thing that came up, and I was like, I wonder why that game. Because literally, I was looking for a bad Amiga game, and I went on to Lemon Amiga, which is like a great Amiga gaming site. And they've actually got a list on there because they let the users vote on games, give them ratings on the site. and they've got like a top 100 worst Amiga games, and this one was like number 19 on there. So I had to kind of scroll through the list. The stuff like Gazza's Pro Soccer 2 from 1990 was like near the bottom of it.
Gazza's Pro Soccer.
So this is like the first one I'd heard of on that list. So that I'll go with that one. So like I said, nothing I'll revisit ever again, but interesting anyway.
I probably, that game, I think it was around 100 and something quid. I bought it for 30, but I sold it for like over 100. I was like, who bought that?
Some sucker. Yeah, but then you don't buy CD32 games for the quality.
No,
I don't know why we buy them, but yeah. So what are we going to go for next then, Joe?
I am going to go for a game that I don't think AVGN has reviewed, or at least not properly on AVGN, but maybe he's done it on like a Mike and James and Mike Mondays. But I'm going to go for a game you guys weren't expecting, Eternal Champions. Do you know that one, Eternal Champions?
Sure, we mentioned that in the news, didn't we?
We did
recently.
We did recently
on the Mega Drive.
On the Mega Drive. That is a terrible, terrible Mega Drive game. Famously, I sell it for £1 when I get it at cons because nobody ever wants it because it just never sells. So another one-on-one beat 'em up off the back of the hype of Street Fighter 2 came out in 1993. Very 90s in its kind of like character design and setting and stuff like that. But it looks quite hopeful if you just Google it and you just look at like the characters and the game and the artwork and stuff like that. Like the actual character sprites are really, I would say, are quite cool, quite detailed. They're not generic in any like sense of the word. Like you can play as a guy called Trident, who's like a weird, like scaly fish man, like green guy, and then you can play as like a guy called Blade, who's like a futuristic fighting guy, and there's a robot, and there's a guy who's like dressed like a 1920s detective, like there's a wizard. Like the character design looks really cool, but then the level design, I think the graphics look horrible on, which is really disappointing straight away. But then I started playing it, and it was just, once again, it was just clunky. The controls were not tight, like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. Like they were just really lame. The controllers just really felt really delayed. And it was impossibly hard. Like it was so difficult. Like I could not beat the first fight for the life of me. Which I forget the name. I think her name was Jet. I could not beat her. She was flying all over the screen. And I'm like, wait, I've got to fight like 10 of these guys. This is just like impossible. So I reset the game, picked a different character to try and fight somebody else. And it was like a guy in the Vietnam jungle. And I managed to beat him. And I was like, right, got him. I get to the next fight. And it was, oh God, who was it? I think it was the Trident guy. And he beat me. And I thought, okay, right, let's try this again. And it took me back a stage. So I looked it up. If you lose a fight, it takes you back to the stage you were on before.
Oh, wow.
So imagine playing Mortal Kombat, especially Mortal Kombat 2, which gets impossibly hard. And every time you lose a match, you go back a level. And you have to do it again. And I was like, that is just absolutely awful game design. And on top of that, you've got poor graphics. And it was so stiff, the controls. And I think the difficulty just really, really, really took me out of it. And it was just so slow and clunky. And I just thought going back a level was just like the icing on the shit cake.
It's a cheap trick, isn't it?
Yeah, so it pains me to say, but like, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10. Simply for I liked the game design of the characters, but I thought the gameplay was awful.
If I ever have kids, I'm going to call them Blade and Jet.
There you go, Blade and Jet and Trident. Apparently the sequel / kind of remake for the Sega CD, which actually has fatalities and blood in it, is a little bit more playable, but it's incredibly expensive. And you know me, I've played all of these on actual hardware. I've played them all on my Mega Drive so far. So yeah, 2 out of 10 again.
I like the character design. I'm looking at a video of it here. Xavier.
Yeah.
Who looks like some kind of what do you say, like some kind of mage or wizard or something, or just see like glowing red eyes. And at the end, when she gets defeated, or he, or whatever it is, they get burned at the stake.
Nice. I didn't see that.
That's quite cool. Like,
play as that character, so
yeah, it looks a quite nice design with like green smoke coming off of them. Music sounds quite good. I've listened to music while you guys are talking. Then, in terms of audio, not too bad for the Mega Drive.
I didn't pick up on the music actually. Interestingly, and I don't know if that's because I got so taken out by the difficulty of the game. I didn't comment on it, did I? Oh, that's going to bug me now. I'm going to have to go back and listen to it.
So I've looked again at the reception it got. So in the UK, in February 94, it was the top-selling Mega Drive game.
You see, I think this is all bollocks because other than
anyone can write Wikipedia.
Other than the Amiga, like Amiga magazines, even if you go back and you read like Sega Power, they were like, "This is the best game ever, 9 out of 10," and it's just like, how? Like they just gave everything a good review back then. It feels like, other than Amiga games.
Mean Machine Sega give it 97%, said it's at least as good as Street Fighter 2. Electronic Games give it 91%. In 1995, Megazone magazine put it in their top 50 games ever.
Ah, shite.
Saying huge characters, heaps of playability. It's up there with Mortal Kombat 2 and Street Fighter 2.
Absolutely not.
So there you go. And now they're making a movie about it, apparently. Yeah, so what are you going to give it then?
2 out of 10.
Another two. A lot of twos.
A lot of twos.
So yeah, Eternal Champions, not on Joe's recommended list, but if you believe the hype back in the day, as good as Street Fighter 2. Right then, let's go for your next game, Ravi.
Aquaman, the Battle for Atlantis.
I can't believe you've played that.
Yeah, I loved it.
I know. He said,
So,
which version did you play then?
I played the GameCube version. All of the games I played were GameCube because I had it on my Wii U, basically. So I played that with Nintendo, the GameCube emulator for the Wii U. It was good. Like, I've heard reviews, people said Aquaman Battle for Atlantis is like Superman 64 in water. And, you know, it's interesting, right? So we'll go through the negatives first. It looks absolutely awful. Like, the intro sequences, they don't even have voiceovers in it. So it's like comic book. But they've tried to do it in like a comic style, but it's not drawn nicely like in 13 or Max Payne or something like that. You know, it's DC game, and you think it would be stylized. It would be like directly taken from the comic art. It's these absolutely awful renders, like really
3D, aren't they?
Yeah, really bad intro ones. And then they've got speech bubbles, and it's all really lame. Like, I think if you were a big Aquaman fan, and Aquaman, I know he's the butt of jokes and everything until the recent movies. You have to watch Big Bang Theory to see everyone rinsing Raj about Aquaman. But it was still quite a good comic. And it's interesting because so what you're doing is you're floating around in this world, and I must say the graphics themselves are quite good. The representation of water, the way that he's flowing through it. As you get used to the flying or flowing, swimming through the water, it's like Superman 64 in the kind of controls. You can go 2 up, 2 down, you know, and it's kind of a bit of a steep learning curve. But once you get used to that, you can rag around the map, and you can go in a different kind of free roam style. So there's obviously enemies. You can see them in the distance. Initial levels, you know, the aqua people. I haven't read that much Aquaman. But the aqua people.
the mermen.
The mermen.
Singing, I'm a Barbie girl.
The mermen are basically hopeless. So they're just getting battered everywhere that they go. And you've got to follow this one merman just getting beaten up constantly. And they're like grabbing him and feeling him up and stuff. And you've got to go in as Aquaman. But when it charges in, it reminded me of Pokemon. So it's like going into battle mode. You know, you have your exploration mode, then you go into Aquaman battle mode. But in the options, they had this like dynamic camera or fixed camera. If you choose a fixed camera, it's much better because it's like it's like a kind of like a Streets of Rage or a Die Hard arcade, but in water. So you're still kind of floating, but you can do combos.
A lot of your games are getting compared to Die Hard Arcade. It's Die Hard Arcade and what? BMX XXX. It's Die Hard Arcade on BMX. I know you didn't say that.
No, but there's lots of good combos in there, like, because he's got long hair as well. So when he's fighting, you're kind of like, yeah, and his hair's all floating around. But then he'll like start kneeing someone in the face and like get really brutal, and you can do grabs and stuff. And I found that the more, you could do the monotonous punching like you had in Charlie's Angels, where you just punch and punch and punch them. But if you did the combos, you can do them really quick. Then you can switch to another person. So you have 3 people attacking you at the same time, some other people shooting, and you could kind of like switch around, do a combo, bam, 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 bam. But also the blocking was quite good in there as well. So the enemies were quite smart. They would block. You would block as well. As you're going around, you're killing people, you're getting pickups of like these Aquaman tokens or whatever they are. And then you also, as you let further into the levels, you're more free to go around, pick up tokens in different places, and then hit, other groups of blokes trying to mash up Aqua City. But Aquaman seems to be on his own, basically, and he's got to defend the whole lot because his people are useless. But later on, I didn't get that far in it. I got to like the 3rd level, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely one that I'd like to go back to. I thought it's a good game that gets a bad rap by elitists.
Like me.
Well, I'm looking at a long play of it at the minute, and I think, in terms of the level design, the underwater worlds look quite creepy.
Yeah, music by Tommy Tallarico as well.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay, interesting.
Atmospheric.
I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing these days, but I've been associated with it. The only thing to me is it's very unrealistic. Because have you ever tried punching underwater?
Well, he just stands up in water as well.
Yeah, it doesn't land like a punch underwater is like punching in a dream. It's like,
yeah, no, he stands vertically in water perfectly fine without moving. Like it's, it is very unrealistic, but it feels comic booky.
So reviews of the day: Game Informer gave it 2 out of 10. GameSpot 2.3 out of 10. Nintendo Power 1.6 out of 5.
I'm going for 7. Sod them all.
Whoa.
7. Whoa. GameFAQs put this as the number 5 worst GameCube game and the worst action, number 1 worst action adventure game.
I'm going to go down and play Aquaman after this. Yeah. Live my aqua dreams.
There you go. You played that before, Joe?
Yeah, and I remember it felt like what you just said, like a dream. Like it felt really slow and horrible, but once again, I think I played it at a game kiosk in like 2003.
I agree, it plays like a dream.
So you got the best rated one yet in terms of scores. My next one I'm not going to be as favourable to. And this was a recommendation on our last Hangout, actually. I think it was Gareth who suggested that I play this one. This was Wayne's World that I played on I think he said the NES one, but I have my Mega Drive set up. So I played it on the Sega Mega Drive. So before I get into this, either of you guys played Wayne's World on the Mega Drive before?
Is it the one where you collect stuff and every time you pick something up, it goes, nah?
Yes, that is the one. Badly sampled clips of the movie.
I'm getting flashbacks now. I see this. You were a huge Wayne's World fan as well, aren't you?
I did. I loved, we used to watch the TV series and then the movies. Big fan of them back in the day. And this, though, is dreadful. And it actually starts really badly. At the beginning of the game, you've got basically Wayne and Garth presenting their TV show in their basement. And it tries to do an extreme close-up, which literally has their heads moving side to side on the screen. So it's not even a close-up. So quite why they couldn't do that. The Mega Drive could easily do that sprite scaling, so I'm not sure why they didn't just zoom in and out. Very bizarre. And then, in a weird twist of irony, the game starts with them running through the top 10 worst video games they've played that week. And this one is mysteriously missing off that list. And then, randomly, Garth gets snatched by a purple slimy hand, and Wayne is stuck on his own in Kramer's Music Store. And when you get into the game and you see the character of Wayne, he's got like a massive bobblehead.
Yeah, he's got a huge head, hasn't he?
And weirdly, at the start of the game, because basically they're presenting the TV show and it's all presented as like a flashback. So when you're playing the game, it's what happened before. And they explain this big head by Wayne saying, I was stuck in Kramer's music store and my head was the size of the Mirthmobile and Garth was gone. Doesn't say why his head is suddenly inflated, but it is mentioned in the start of it. So
it's like it's trying to be Motorhead, the game, but like more comical. I don't know. Yeah, no, it looks awful.
The level design looks horrible as well. It just looks like a maze.
Yeah, it's a mess. It really is. It's like, and obviously being set in a music store, you'd think at least the game would have some good music. At least it's got to be a bit of a saving grace. You know, Wayne's World is all about the music industry, and they're trying to get a record deal and stuff in the movies. And you think it's been based around music. Have a listen to the sound of it.
Sweet.
Could you take another 40 minutes of that?
Sounds like
I had to. Oh, do you want more of the music? Here you go.
it sounds like having a mental breakdown. That's quite good. I like that.
Get into it now, aren't you?
Ravi, 7 out of 10.
Yeah. So yeah, awful in both visuals and audio. It reminds me a bit if you've ever played the music level on Zool. It's a bit like that, but not as good.
I understand that Wayne's in the arcade, in the music shop.
Yeah,
but why has he got the guitar? Because that's the aim of the shop, isn't it? To kind of get it.
Well, obviously, I guess he was left on his own, so he pinched it, I imagine.
And maybe Noah's Arcade would be a better place for him to actually be inside a video game.
None of it makes sense. And then, basically Wayne fires bullets out of his guitar. The enemies are musical themed. So
and they're like bagpipes speakers that you jump on. Stuff. Jesus.
Yeah, bagpipes, drum kits, accordions come and get you as well. All the way through it, there's badly sampled clips of the movie as well. I'm not sure whether they're actually samples of the movie or someone doing an impression of them. Because it sounds
It could have been
ropey.
done so better, couldn't it?
Yeah.
You could have had ninjas in there, that room of ninjas that he opened.
Yeah.
Loads of little in-jokes. Yeah, no, this is rubbish.
That's an awful game. So on my notes here, I put great game. Not. So I could have given that. What am I going to give that one? I can't give them all 2 out of 10. 1 out of 10.
Nice.
There you go. I'm going to be harsher on this one. 1 out of 10. So what's your next one, Joe?
So I've cheated a little bit with my last one because as soon as we came up with this idea, I was like, I actually want to talk about this game because this was a game that it was genuinely like hated on when it came out, and it's not very retro, I must say. It came out in 2013, and everybody hated this game and famously poo-poo on it still. And it's an Xbox 360 game, which was developed by Sega. This is Aliens Colonial Marines, which I'm a huge Aliens fan. I love Alien. Aliens is one of my favorite films of all time. So when they announced way back in the day, because this game was in development hell for like 5 years, that they were doing a sequel to Aliens based on the Colonial Marines, I was hyped. And I bought this game like full price, like I don't want to say the day, maybe the week it came out. And everybody was like, it's a mess. It's a terrible game. It's awful. It's such a mess, blah, blah, blah. And I just sat there like, I don't see the problem with it. Like, I enjoyed it. Like,
what's your problem?
Yeah, like the story was a bit wishy-washy nonsense. Like, I can't remember why, but I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Aliens film, but Michael Bihn's character, who plays John Connor, and not John Connor, who plays Kyle Reese in Terminator, plays Hicks in this. He's still on the planet because it's set afterwards. And it's like, oh, he's still on the planet. And I can't remember why, because in the film, he gets taken away and dies in Alien 3. But obviously they're trying to make it like Alien 3 never happened. But I enjoyed it. Like, maybe I had rose tinted graphic glasses on, and like I enjoyed like the nostalgia of it, because it's like you get the pulse rifle and it sounds perfect. It sounds like the Aliens pulse rifle. You get the smart gun, you get the pump action shotgun, and then you got variants of those guns. So while you're exploring LV-42, going around this world that is created by, you know, Ridley Scott and James Cameron and Aliens, you could find Hicks's shotgun, Hudson's pulse rifle, and Hudson, who's played by Bill Paxton in the film, in Aliens, gets pulled through the floor. But in this game, you can actually find him cocooned to a wall and kill him. Like, you know, like it, and I loved it all. Like it's all silliness, but like I really, really enjoyed it. But the reason the game was apparently so panned was because the multiplayer, like the online deathmatch and stuff, was terrible. But that's not something I play. Like, it's not something.
Yeah, I was going to say, who cares about that? If you the campaign in these games is what you go for.
I was here for the campaign, and then also the AI is terrible, which I will give it. I will say, when you see an alien, it does just turn, it sees you and just runs at you with its arms like sticking out at you, and they don't like run around on the ceiling and stuff like they did in the trailers, and you know, unless it was already on the ceiling, and they were meant to be really smart and hide in the shadows and pull you up, you know, into a vent and all this kind of stuff. And famously, as it turns out, this was all built into the game, but whoever was doing the final coding of the games, he accidentally left a space in the code, which they found out years later, which made it so the AI, whenever the alien saw you, they'd just run at you. Whereas they were meant to actually like
an attract mode.
Yeah, whereas they were meant to actually like, you know, stalk you and stuff from the shadows like they would in the films.
Yeah.
But they just run at you like with their mouth wide open, and it all turned out it was just they left like one digit of code in there that's just ruined it. But I'm looking at the scores now.
I'm surprised it didn't patch that on the 360.
You would have thought.
You can do
and I
updates
always thought, surely that's something easy for them to patch, but I don't know if it was like something they figured out later on, or it was too deep in there and they just couldn't patch it. I don't know. But interestingly, it has actually got a 6 out of 10 on Steam, and then it's got a 4 out of 10 on Metacritic. So maybe once again, this is one of those games that people have gone back to, and it's not as bad as, you know, they remember, kind of thing. But, you know, I watched a video the other night because I'm on an Alien hype, because I watched Alien Romulus, and it was like the top 10 Alien games, you know, we recommend. And they were like, don't play Colonial Marines, it's the worst game you'll ever play, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, it was a good game. Like, I enjoyed it. It was a little bit glitchy as well. I remember I invited all my friends over, and I was like, oh yeah, guys, watch this Colonial Marines. And they were like, oh, it's crap, isn't it? I was like, no, watch it. Like, let's play it. Like, you'll see, like, it sounds just like Aliens. And it did actually glitch, and the sound effects wouldn't work, which was quite typical and embarrassing. But I'm very much like, you know, I bought that game for 40 quid. I was going to force myself to like it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I wouldn't give it a 7. I'd probably give it like a 5, maybe a 6.
Right.
A 5 probably, but a 6 with nostalgia.
Well, looking back at the reviews at the time, a lot of them say they criticise the game for low quality graphics and bad tech. I mean, I'm looking at a YouTube video; it looks pretty nice to me. Now, I'm looking at the PC version. I don't know whether that was better than the 360 version. Looks like a lot of the assets are kind of used quite a bit over and over. But yeah, in terms of the atmosphere of it, looks quite nice. Yeah. The lighting and everything.
Yeah.
Edge Magazine give it 5 out of 10. Eurogamer 3 out of 10. EGM give it 9 out of 10. Yeah. So it's easily the best gaming representation of the franchise to date.
There you go. I mean, a lot of the trailers of the game, the graphics looked absolutely fantastic, and then the game came out, and Sega had to be like, oh, it wasn't actually an engine, sorry, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like a lot of that did happen with it, unfortunately. So I think a 9 out of 10 is very generous, but
yes,
it's good to see that a few reviews were giving it 5s and stuff.
Yeah, well, nice to play a game that we actually enjoyed nonetheless, despite public opinion. So what's your final game then, Ravi?
My final game is the game that I struggled to play. But looking at it, most people can't even play it past the second level. So I struggled to play it because I literally felt sick as soon as I started playing it because the camera angles were so bad. So this is Men in Black 2 Alien Escape. it was weird. It was like they'd got everything from Men in Black, apart from like any of the rights for Will Smith, or any of the other characters in there. So it was kind of like with that 60s Men in Black vibe, at the beginning. Must say the graphics, fantastic, really good, really smooth. The intro was fantastic graphically. But then Will Smith's character came on and it looks nothing like Will Smith. The voice actor doesn't even try. He's just like, it's just...
Hey guys, I'm Will Smith.
No, he's like, hey, how you doing? That sounds like some tasty chicken. It's just like absolutely bad. Yeah, really, really bad. And then they've made up like, the guy that you originally go and get weapons from. He's unavailable, so we've got another guy from the system. And
I wonder why. I wonder if that's because of an actor. They have likeness of actors, and you have to pay for that. I wonder if that's a reason.
I think so, because it had none of the humor in there of Men in Black at all, which is Men in Black 2. That had the soundtrack. Here come the Men in Black. I expect that to be the first thing that came in.
It was Men in Black 1. That was. In Men in Black 2's defense.
Was there another tune for Men in Black 2? I know
there was. It was. Oh, it's on the tip. Might have had to Google it quickly. Can't find it. I'll let you know when I find it. there was a song that was in the charts.
Yeah, I remember that.
Black Suits Coming, Nod Your Head by Will Smith. That was it.
Yeah. I guess Will was just like had no kind of connection with this game at all. And the thing was, good graphics, all right, music. Voice acting was absolutely awful. The interface was quite nice. So, as you go through the menus and stuff, it's like MIB style, which is pretty cool. I would have loved to have like a Men in Black phone back in the days with like, an interface on that, like MIB. The aiming was absolutely awful. So instead of like, an auto lock on or anything like that, or it was kind of like point your gun and then move the character and shoot. It reminded me of Die Hard Trilogy. Not Die Hard Arcade. But, the one level, sorry, pal. The level where he's running around in the building. And you kind of get trapped in corners and stuff, and the shooting that you've got to do is really at a fixed angle. It was like that for the entire thing, which made it impossibly solid for the first couple of levels. And I only got halfway through level 1, felt really sick, tried it a couple of times, felt sick, just gave up. But apparently there's this just giant turtle dude that pops up in level 2. You just can't get past him. Like everyone's just saying in comments of the videos, as soon as the turtle guy turns up, your game's over. That's it. So, this one I would give, especially with the disappointment. I can imagine a kid getting this a birthday, being obsessed with Will Smith and Men in Black and all the humor, and then being like, "That's not Will."
They'd be like, Will, give me a slap in the face.
That's it. A pre-slap. This is pre-slap when he was a nice guy. No profanity, Dan. That's the period he was in. I'd give it a 1 out of 10. I was severely disappointed. And MIB was the biggest thing on the planet back then, yeah.
When looking back at the time, game rankings give it 54%. Metacritic, 50 out of 100. GameSpot, 6 out of 10. So it seems very average scores. IGN, 4 out of 10. It seems a pretty forgettable game by most reviews looking back.
It had so much potential. You could have done a really good MIB game. They were on top of their game back then.
So my final game, and someone had to do it. Rise of the Robots.
Chong, chong, chong.
Well, the reason, not only because obviously it is a game that we often talk about on the podcast and make fun of. Modern Vintage Gamer did a really good video about Rise of the Robots last week.
All right.
Did you guys watch that?
Yeah, huge one, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, really in-depth exploration, probably the most in-depth one I've seen so far. A lot of the people in the video I've tried to get on the podcast that he named, unsuccessfully.
He was talking about the marketing managers and stuff, wasn't he? And,
yeah,
really went in depth.
Get Brian May on.
There's a few names on there. I thought, so I'd love to do a Rise of the Robots kind of episode, with one of the developers. And I've had a couple of them who've replied to me until I mentioned that, and then they mysteriously start ghosting me after. I imagine the memories are still not all that great. But I mean, this is also a game that personally for me was one of the most disappointing experiences when I was a kid. Because I remember I was obsessed with Terminator. Really into Terminator 1 and 2, definitely up there in my favourite films of all time, and loved Mortal Kombat. And what could be better than a beat-em-up game coming out that was a bit like Terminator? So I was really hyped for this game coming out. And I remember, again, famously, it was one of the first kind of really hyped video games, television campaigns, magazine campaigns, billboards, even Bad Influence on TV before the game came out, reskinned their entire title sequence.
Oh my God.
To look like Rise of the Robots. So I remember the hype for this really vividly. And then I did get this game for Christmas that year. Was it 94 or 95? I can't remember which year Rise of the Robots came out. Let me have a little look on the old interwebs. 94 it came out. So it would have been Christmas 94 when I got this game. Asked my mum for it, really excited. And the thing about Rise of the Robots is they must have known it was a turkey, because they didn't send out any advance copies to magazines to review.
Right.
In time for the Christmas issues, which is, again, a bit of a dirty trick, because obviously the Christmas issues of most gaming mags are like the biggest ones of the year. And, even if you get a game, you want to read about it in a magazine, your Christmas present, see what other people think. And I remember putting this into my Amiga and seeing that the first thing that stood out to me was that it came on 15 floppy disks.
Most of that was the intro sequence.
Yeah.
which I'm going to say was well impressive. Like for the Amiga, the video intro was impressive. Yeah.
It really was. And, that still stands up. But for me, I played a bit of the Amiga version. But I thought for this, I'd actually do a version that I hadn't played before. So, it's kind of like fresh eyes on it then. So actually I spent more time playing the 3DO version of Rise of the Robots, because it was one of those games that came out on everything. Even came out on the Philips CDI. The Game Gear had a version of it as well. Came out on pretty much all the major platforms back then. So I played the 3DO version of it thinking, well, it's probably going to be graphically up there with the most impressive versions of it. And when you get into it again, the FMV intros look amazing, even better on the 3DO than they do on the Amiga.
One chord from Brian May.
Well, it has a bit more in this. There's actually about 30 seconds of the Brian May song. And on the title screen, it actually says, press B for Brian May.
Which does he pop up? Toasty!
Yeah. So you press it, and actually it is a dedicated section of the intro screen. So you can skip straight through and hear 30 seconds of his song, which I believe was actually a song off his album. It wasn't even made specifically for Rise of the Robots. I learned that when I made a video about the Philips CDI about 10 years ago, and I got a copyright strike from Sony Music for the inclusion of a Brian May song in my video.
Just a brain.
So that's how I know. No, again, on the CDI, it's the full track.
Wow.
So yeah, the 3DO and the CDI have a good portion of the track with vocals and stuff as well. So yeah, if you're interested, that is in this version of the game. I did laugh though at press B for Brian May. Kind of reminded me of the precursor to, press F to pay respects from Call of Duty. That could be like the next internet meme, I think, press B for Brian May. But yeah, and one thing about the 3DO version I liked is not only have you got those, high resolution 3D introduction FMVs, but it's got a narrator over it as well telling the story. Which, it's a pretty standard kind of...
bit more what it needed, actually. It felt so bare and unfinished on other versions.
Yeah. It fleshed it out a bit more, and I can understand they couldn't do that on a floppy disk version of it. The narrator's a bit cheesy, admittedly, but it is a nice inclusion. In terms of graphics, again, Rise of the Robots is all about the presentation of the graphics, and I do think the enemies look great, and I think, the design of the robots is really nice. You've got a nice variety of different characters in there as well. Sound effects are really nice on the 3DO version. You got a nice, satisfying metallic clunk when you hit the enemies. So it does feel like, they're heavy and you are hitting them, which is quite nice. I did try to play this properly because, as we know from watching a million YouTube videos on it over the years. It is possible to beat the game just by basically going to the corner of the screen and jumping over and over and kicking, doing the high kick on them, which is definitely, considering they hype this game up on being realistic artificial intelligence that learns how you play and combats you. That is all bollocks. None of that in there as well. There are a couple of special moves as well that I never found playing the Amiga version of this, but I did find one of them on the 3DO. That's the cyborg, the character you play, who, considering it's called Rise of the Robots, you're not even a robot, you're a cyborg.
Same difference.
I thought it was a bit odd. Yeah. But I think a cyborg has elements of humanity in there, doesn't it? Like a brain and blood and...
No, does it?
Depends if
based on the human.
A simulant or... Anyway.
Yeah, which I'll get into because there's a moment in that actually proves that you're a cyborg. But you can do like a shoulder slam. So you press right, left, and one of the buttons, A, B, or C, and you'll do a shoulder slam across the screen, which is quite an effective move. You can also do like a turbo headbutt as well, apparently. I couldn't make that one work. Apparently you press down, up, and then one of the buttons. Couldn't get it working for me though, but the shoulder slam was quite good. With this game, you've got to beat all the robots twice. So you get through them all, and then you've got to go back and play them all again, which, is obviously a real cheap trick to lengthen the gameplay. Because obviously they spent that much time on the graphics, they didn't have much time to make a game around it. So just make the kids play it twice before they get to the end. I did manage to get to the end of the game and get to the last boss, who is the supervisor, who is a blatant T-1000 ripoff. Looks very cool when it melts on the floor. It does have that kind of liquid metal kind of aesthetic to it. And when it kills you, because I didn't actually beat her, there's a nice FMV sequence where she comes over to you, rips your head off, and then makes her finger into like a point, like on Terminator 2, and then skewers your brains out and all blood comes out your eyes. So again, proving that you are a cyborg, not a robot. So again, it wasn't by far the best beat 'em up game I've ever played, but it does look lovely. I found the game was just boring. I think there's, a hell of a lot of wasted potential there. Because, a game that, Terminator was, again, massive. It was only a couple of years after Terminator 2 when this game came out. So the hype of that was still real. And I remember being really excited about it because I thought it was going to be a Terminator-style beat-em-up game. And if it had been, it would have been awesome. So, if they'd built a good game around these gorgeous visuals, it would have been something else. But unfortunately, it seems like they spent 95% of the time on the look of the game and 5% on the gameplay. So
there was a lot of hype at that time that didn't deliver.
Yeah.
I remember the Shenmue hype, and I thought, this isn't going to deliver. This is never going to look like that. And then it came out. I was like, oh my God, it's delivered. But Rise of the Robots was completely the opposite. But I'm glad you've played it on a different system because you've got a bit of a different perspective from it.
I think if you are going to play it, probably 3DO or the PC version is probably the definitive version. I've never played Rise 2 Resurrection, though, which was the sequel to it that came out on, I think it was on PC and PlayStation. Maybe was it Saturn?
I've got it. I've not played it, but I have got it.
Right. 96 that came out, which by all, everything I've seen about it was actually a much better game. But I think by then, just people were so burnt off the original that it really didn't get very good sales. Although, looking at scores back then, All Game gave that game a 4 out of 5. IGN gave it a 2. Didn't do that well. Looking at the original Rise of the Robots, so this is quite interesting. So I remember back then there were certain magazines that actually give it a really good score.
Of course they did.
Yeah, I looked at some of the Amiga mags. I think it was famously... You might know this, Ravi. I've been trying to find this actually while we're talking here. Was it the one Amiga that gave it like 90% or something like that?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Which they still kind of get ridiculed.
There's a novel as well that you can buy.
Yeah, there was, like a graphical novel. Again, though, it was a whole thing. I mean, from what I've heard, the plan was to basically build like a whole world around this and probably toys and that kind of thing as well.
In an alternate reality,
the game came out,
could be going to the Rise of the Robots theme park instead of Nintendo at Alton Towers.
Yeah, so Amiga Power absolutely slated this game. I remember they gave it 5% back in the day, which, they were a magazine that didn't hold any punches if they didn't like a game. Yeah, really varying scores as well. Amiga Point of View magazine give it 15%. Amiga Joker in Germany give it 91% when it came out. CU Amiga 80%. So yeah, some really differing scores on that. Came out £43, that game in 1994. Which, let's have a look at inflation. £43 in 1994 in today's money. Bear in mind, people complain about the cost of games now. What do you think that would work out?
60 quid. I don't know, maybe 70.
Let's have a look at show amount. Here we go. £91.99 that works out.
You get a free piece of Brian May's hair.
Yes. Yeah, so definitely didn't live up to the hype. But again, because it was such a disappointment playing it as a kid, it was nice to kind of go back and just kind of reaffirm that, I was right all along. So let me give it a score. I'll give it 2 out of 10 for my final game. There you go. It's my official Rise of the Robot score, 2 out of 10. You've never played it before, Joe. You need to play Rise and give me your thoughts on it one day.
Once when I was like 5 years old. So I need to play it again. I was going to play it again for this and then realised I didn't have it on Mega Drive. And then I couldn't bring myself to spend like 15 quid on it.
When I have my funeral, I'm going to have that one Brian May chord.
While they're lowering the coffin.
When they lower the coffin, yeah.
So interesting episode, guys. I think we should definitely do a part 2 of this at some point. If we can, maybe not for a few months.
Maybe let's play some good games.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? So this has been an epic one. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and of course for your continued support of the podcast. We'll see you on the main show next week. Have a good week.
Damn.